The aroma of roasted chicken wafted through the air, mingling with the faint scent of garlic and herbs as I set the table for dinner. The soft glow of the chandelier bathed the room in warm light, illuminating the family photos that lined the walls, smiling faces frozen in time, each snapshot a reminder of happier days. Yet tonight the atmosphere felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud. I could sense Ethan's impatience radiating from across the table, his fingers drumming against the wood, a subtle yet unmistakable sign of his growing discontent. As we gathered around the dinner table, I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy. "Ethan, how was your day?" I asked, forcing a smile, hoping to bridge the widening chasm between us. But he merely shrugged, his eyes darting to the family heirloom resting in the center of the table, a delicate silver locket that had been passed down through generations. My heart raced. I could feel the weight of his gaze on it, his thoughts swirling with entitlement and greed. "That locket should be mine, Mom. You know it belongs to me," he declared, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. The words hung there, sharp and accusatory. I felt my heart sink as the laughter of past dinners echoed in my mind, a stark contrast to the chilling reality unfolding before me. "Ethan, it's a family heirloom. It's not just about ownership, it holds memories and history," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. I could see his frustration bubbling just beneath the surface, his jaw clenched, and I braced myself for the inevitable confrontation. "Memories don't pay the bills, Mom," he shot back, his tone laced with anger. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a flood of resentment that had been building for years. I glanced at Linda, who sat beside me, her expression a mix of concern and disbelief. She reached for my hand, a silent gesture of support, but I could feel the tension radiating from Ethan. The dining room, once a sanctuary of family gatherings, now felt like a battleground. I could almost hear the echoes of my own thoughts, questioning where I had gone wrong, how I had raised a son who could so easily demand what was rightfully ours. I had always wanted to protect him, but now I felt cornered, desperate to maintain harmony while facing his unreasonable demands. As dinner progressed, I could feel the weight of the impending confrontation looming, a dark shadow that threatened to engulf our family. The living room was a cacophony of clashing emotions, the soothing hues of the walls failing to mask the tension that hung in the air like a thick fog. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a warm glow on the family photos that lined the shelves, each frame a reminder of happier times. I could smell the faint scent of lavender from the candle burning on the coffee table, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside me. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my fingers brushing against the fabric, feeling the roughness beneath my fingertips as I prepared for what was to come. Ethan paced back and forth, his movements restless, reflecting the storm of entitlement that had taken root in him. "You know, Mom, it's about time you understand that the house belongs to me now." "It's my turn," his words pierced through the air, each syllable a dagger aimed at my heart. I felt a wave of frustration wash over me, my breath hitching as I struggled to respond. How did it come to this? My son, once so innocent and loving, now stood before me demanding ownership of the very home that had nurtured him. I could feel the weight of my mother's heirloom ring on my finger, a symbol of our family's history and love. It was the same ring my mother had worn, passed down through generations, each scratch and dent telling a story of resilience. I remembered her voice, filled with warmth, reminding me of the importance of family, of the bonds that should never be broken. But now those words felt like a distant echo, overshadowed by the reality of Ethan's demands. "You can't just take what's mine," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling with a mixture of sadness and anger. Ethan stopped, turning to face me, his eyes narrowed. "I'm not taking anything, I'm claiming what's rightfully mine. You've had your chance, Mom, it's my time now." The coldness in his tone sent shivers down my spine, and I couldn't help but feel the sting of betrayal. In that moment, I realized that this was not just about a house, it was about the unraveling of our family ties. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to show weakness. I needed to find a way to restore the peace that was slipping through my fingers. But how? I was trapped between my love for my son and the bitter reality of his growing entitlement. The conflict loomed larger than ever, casting shadows over our once happy home, and I knew the confrontation was only just beginning. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of simmering spices, the warm glow of the overhead lights casting a soft halo around the room. I stood at the counter, chopping vegetables, my mind racing with thoughts of Ethan's demands that had spiraled into an all-consuming conflict. The knife clattered against the cutting board, a sound that echoed my internal chaos. Each slice felt futile, as if I were trying to cut through the tension that hung thick in the air, almost palpable. Ethan's voice from the living room was sharp and demanding, cutting through the chatter of family gathered for what was supposed to be a light-hearted dinner. "I deserve the house, it's my right." His words pierced through my concentration, igniting a fire of anger and helplessness within me. I paused, my breath hitching slightly as I recalled the gleam in his eyes when he first mentioned wanting ownership. That sparkle of entitlement felt like a betrayal that I could hardly comprehend. How had it come to this? I could hear my mother, Linda, trying to reason with him, her voice soft but firm, as she attempted to mediate our family's growing divide. Ethan, you need to understand your mother's perspective. This isn't just a house, it's our home filled with memories. You can't just demand it like it's a prize to be won. Her words were meant to highlight the emotional weight of our family home, yet they fell on deaf ears. I could picture Ethan's stubborn expression, set in defiance as he dismissed her, the flick of his wrist signaling his irritation. In the corner of the kitchen, I caught a glimpse of a family photo hanging on the wall. It captured a moment when we were all smiles, arms wrapped around each other, laughter frozen in time. That memory felt like a distant echo now, a stark contrast to the reality unfolding around me. I longed for that sense of unity, but it felt like a ghost of what once was, now overshadowed by greed and anger. My heart raced as I tried to gather my thoughts, grappling with the fear of losing both my home and my son. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus on the task at hand. I needed to confront Ethan. The thought sent a jolt of anxiety through me, but the weight of my silence was growing unbearable. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. Why was he doing this? Why couldn't he see the pain he was causing? I grabbed a handful of herbs, their fresh scent a fleeting comfort amidst the turmoil. Just then the living room erupted with raised voices, the sound of Ethan's defiance clashing against Linda's pleading tones. You don't get it, you can't keep me from what's mine. I could see Ethan's body tense, fists clenched, his posture radiating a mixture of rage and entitlement. I felt my own frustration peak, a mix of sorrow and fury swirling within me. How had we arrived at this point where love was entangled with greed? I set the knife down, my hands trembling slightly as I leaned against the counter to steady myself. I needed to calm down, to approach this without letting my emotions dictate my actions, but every fiber of my being screamed to protect what was rightfully ours. I closed my eyes for a moment, envisioning the warmth of our family bond, the laughter that echoed in our home, and the memories that had built its foundation. As I opened my eyes, determination surged through me. I would not let this injustice go unchallenged. I grabbed a glass of water, my hands shaking as I took a sip, feeling the cool liquid wash over my dry throat. I could hear the commotion escalating, the sounds of hurt and anger mingling with the clatter of dishes in the kitchen. It was time to step into the fray. I would confront Ethan, and I would reclaim my voice and my home. With a deep breath, I gathered my resolve and walked into the living room, ready to face my son and the turmoil that had become our family's reality. This was my moment, and I would not back down. The stakes were too high, and I could feel the weight of the impending confrontation bearing down on me. As I entered, the room fell silent, all eyes on me. I could feel the tension radiating from everyone, thick as the aroma of the dinner wafting from the kitchen. I was ready to speak my truth, to stand firm against the storm that was Ethan's demands, and I knew I had to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. The day of the signing ceremony dawned with an unsettling brightness, the sun spilling its harsh light through the living room window as if mocking my turmoil. The scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, mingling with the faint metallic tang of anxiety that seemed to cling to my skin. My palms felt clammy as I adjusted the papers on the table, the smooth surface reflecting my unease. I could hear Ethan's footsteps approaching, each step echoing in my mind like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. The weight of what I was about to do hung heavily in the air, and I could feel my heart racing, a frantic drumbeat urging me to reconsider. As Ethan entered, his expression was one of determination, a stark contrast to my growing dread. He stood tall, arms crossed defiantly, his eyes glinting with an intensity that set my nerves on edge. "You know this is the only way, Mom," he said, his voice steady, yet it held an edge that sent a shiver down my spine. I fought the urge to recoil from his demanding presence, forcing my voice to remain even as I replied, "Ethan, we can still find another way. This doesn't have to happen." A flash of frustration crossed his face and he stepped closer, invading my personal space. I could feel the heat radiating off him, a stark contrast to the chill settling in my chest. "You're being unreasonable. If you don't sign this, you're just being selfish." His words cut through the air, sharp and accusatory, and I felt a familiar ache in my heart. Was this really my son speaking? The boy I had nurtured now seemed like a stranger, driven by greed rather than familial love. I remembered the times I had held him as a child, the warmth of his small body against mine, the innocent laughter that once filled our home. How had we come to this? Taking a deep breath, I tried to ground myself, the coolness of the table beneath my fingertips reminding me of the reality I faced. "Ethan, this house isn't just a property, it's our family's history. It's where you grew up, where memories were made. Can't you see what you're asking?" My voice trembled slightly, betraying my resolve. In that moment, I was grasping for a lifeline, hoping to pull him back from the edge of this precipice we were teetering on. But he shook his head, a dismissive gesture that felt like a slap. "History, all I see is a burden that you're too afraid to let go of." His words sliced through the fragile bond we shared, and I felt the sting of betrayal wash over me. I could hardly fathom how someone I had loved so fiercely could reduce our shared past to mere burdensome memories. My breath hitched as memories flooded my mind. Family dinners, birthdays filled with laughter, and long talks that felt like they would last forever. How could he not see the value in those moments? As I glanced at the documents spread out before us, the ink seemed to blur, and I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. Signing them felt like surrendering, like giving up on everything I had fought to protect. Yet the urgency in Ethan's demeanor pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I could see the impatience in his body language, the way he shifted from foot to foot, and it mirrored the chaos roiling within me. "You need to trust me, Mom. This is for both of us." "Just think about it," he reached out, his hand hovering over the papers, a gesture that felt both inviting and threatening. My heart raced, caught between the love I still felt for him and the deep-rooted anger at his entitlement. His insistence felt like a betrayal, a violation of the trust that had once defined our relationship. I had to gather my wits to stand my ground, but the fear of losing him, of losing everything, made my resolve waver. As I stared into his pleading eyes, I realized that this moment was pivotal. It was no longer just about the house, it was about the very essence of our relationship, the trust that had been shattered by his demands. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders. "Ethan, if I sign this, I'm not just giving away a house, I'm giving away my role as your mother." "I can't do that." The silence that followed was deafening, filled with unspoken words and emotions that hung heavy in the room. Ethan's expression shifted, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. I could only hope that I had planted a seed of doubt in his mind, one that might lead him to reconsider the path he was pursuing. But as I looked at the papers once more, I knew the battle was far from over. My determination solidified. I would not allow this to end without a fight. The stakes had never been higher, and I was prepared to reclaim my power no matter the cost. The sun poured through the kitchen window, casting warm golden hues on the table where I sat with Linda, the air thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the faint aroma of pancakes sizzling on the stove. I could hear the faint hum of the neighborhood outside, children laughing, dogs barking, the distant sound of lawnmowers, and yet within the walls of my home a storm was brewing. I felt a tightness in my chest as I prepared to discuss the unthinkable with Ethan. Linda, sensing my anxiety, reached across the table, her hand warm and reassuring against mine. "You know I'm here for you, Madison. Whatever happens, we'll get through this together," she said, her voice a soothing balm. I nodded, appreciating her support, but the weight of the situation loomed large. I wanted peace, a resolution to this escalating conflict, but the thought of confronting Ethan sent shivers down my spine. Memories of our past arguments flashed in my mind, his defiance, my desperation, each encounter more painful than the last. As I set the table with trembling hands, I could feel my heart racing, each beat echoing my fears. I had drafted a plan, a way to connect with Ethan without igniting his anger, but doubts clouded my mind. Would he even listen, or would he dismiss my attempts as he had done before? The thought made my stomach churn. I couldn't lose him forever, but how could I reach him when his demands felt so entitled? When Ethan finally entered the kitchen, his eyes were clouded with an emotion I couldn't decipher. I could see the tension in his posture, the way he clenched his jaw as he glanced at the breakfast spread. "What's all this for?" he asked, his tone skeptical. I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm, to be the mother he had once leaned on. "I thought we could talk, just you and me. I want to understand what's going on, why this is so important to you," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. He crossed his arms defensively, a barrier between us that felt insurmountable. "I don't think you can understand, Mom. You never really have," he retorted, and the sting of his words hit me like a slap. I fought back the urge to react, reminding myself that this was not about my hurt, but about finding common ground. "I'm trying, Ethan. I just want to know what the house means to you, to us. I thought we were a family that could talk about these things," I implored, my voice softening in vulnerability. I watched as his expression flickered, anger battling with uncertainty. He shifted his weight, the tension in his body evident as he processed my words. "You only see it as a house, Mom. For me, it's more than that. It's our history, our legacy. It's about what I want to build for my future," he replied, his voice tinged with passion. A flash of hope ignited within me, but it quickly dimmed as he added, "And if you can't see that, then I don't know how we can move forward." The disappointment washed over me like a cold wave. I had hoped for reconciliation, a moment where we could embrace our shared memories, but instead, I felt the chasm widening. My heart sank as I realized how deeply entrenched his desires were, how little room there was for my feelings in this narrative. I forced a smile, hiding my despair behind a mask of determination. "Let's figure this out together, Ethan. I'm willing to listen. We can find a way that honors both of our needs," I said, my voice trembling with urgency. He paused, the flicker of uncertainty returning to his eyes, but then the moment shattered as he simply shook his head. the finality of his rejection echoing in the silence that followed. I could feel a tear threatening to escape, but I blinked it away, unwilling to give in to despair. I had to believe that somehow I could bridge the gap between us, but the reality was painfully clear. The road to peace would be far more complicated than I had hoped. The tension lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating, as we both retreated into our corners, the fragile hope for reconciliation slipping further from reach. The air in the living room was charged with a palpable tension, a mixture of fear and determination that crackled like static electricity. Shadows danced across the walls, flickering from the overhead light as I squared my shoulders, resolute in the face of Ethan's demands. I could hear the clock ticking, each second amplifying the weight of the decision before me. His eyes, filled with entitlement, bore into me, and I felt a surge of defiance bubbling up from within. This was a pivotal moment, one that would alter the course of our fractured relationship forever. Ethan stood there, arms crossed, his expression a blend of impatience and arrogance. "You have to understand, Mom, the house is mine. I deserve it after everything I've done." His words dripped with a sense of ownership, a claim that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I took a step back, my heart racing as I battled the urge to capitulate. Memories of my love and sacrifices for him flooded my mind, mixing with the sting of betrayal. How had we come to this? "You think I haven't fought for this family?" I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I could almost hear the echoes of our past arguments, the moments where my attempts to connect with him had been met with dismissal. My heart thudded in my chest, and I fought to keep my breathing steady, fighting against the rising tide of panic. "This isn't just about the house, Ethan. It's about our home, our memories, everything we built together." His gaze faltered for a moment, and I seized the opportunity, pressing on. "You're not entitled to anything just because you want it. This is my legacy, and I will not let you take it from me without a fight." The conviction in my words surprised even me, igniting a flame of empowerment that dispelled my earlier fears. I could see the shock in his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty that made my heart race with a newfound strength. The moment hung between us, suspended in time, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. Ethan's mouth opened, and for a heartbeat I thought he might relent, but the anger returned, darkening his features. "You don't get to decide what's best for me anymore, Mom," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls like a thunderclap. I felt my resolve harden as I stood my ground, refusing to back down any longer. This was it, the moment I would reclaim my power, the turning point where I would no longer be a victim of his entitlement. The scent of fresh coffee hung heavily in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of old books that lined the shelves of my workspace. I sat at my cluttered desk, surrounded by piles of papers and notebooks filled with my thoughts, my heart racing as I formulated a plan to reclaim my life. The soft light from the desk lamp illuminated my scribbled notes, casting long shadows that danced across the walls like the doubts swirling in my mind. The weight of betrayal hovered over me, a constant reminder of the stakes involved. I could feel the tension in my shoulders, a tightness that mirrored the resolve building within me. As I stared at the blank page, I was struck by a memory of a time when the house felt like a sanctuary, filled with laughter and warmth. Now it was tainted by conflict. I picked up my pen, tapping it rhythmically against the desk as I considered my approach. "I need to be strategic about this," I murmured to myself, the sound echoing in the quiet room. I couldn't afford any missteps. This was my chance to stand firm against Ethan's demands and assert my rightful place in our family. Linda entered the room, her expression a mix of concern and support. "Madison, what's on your mind?" she asked, her voice soothing yet filled with urgency. I looked up, meeting her gaze, and felt a rush of gratitude for her presence. "I'm planning how to confront Ethan. I can't let him take everything from me, especially the house that holds our memories," I confessed, my voice trembling slightly as I spoke the words aloud. "We need to have a solid plan, something he won't see coming," Linda suggested, her brow furrowing in thought. I nodded, the gears in my mind turning as we brainstormed strategies. The flicker of hope ignited in my chest, a stark contrast to the despair that had threatened to consume me. I began to outline our approach, detailing the steps I would take to regain control, and with each word the fear began to dissipate, replaced by a fierce determination. As we discussed the implications of my plan, I felt a mix of adrenaline and anxiety coursing through me. The risks were tangible. I knew that pushing back could cost me dearly, yet the thought of living in fear of my own son was unbearable. I took a deep breath, resolving to not only protect what was mine but to reclaim my voice in this chaotic family drama. This was more than just a house, it was a symbol of my strength, my memories, and my fight for justice. "This ends with me," I stated firmly, a mantra that would guide me through the turmoil ahead. The moment of reckoning was approaching, and I was ready to face it head-on. The living room felt like a battleground, its familiar decor suddenly alien under the weight of our confrontation. The air was saturated with tension, every breath heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I stood across from Ethan, the distance between us charged with anger and betrayal. The soft glow of the lamp cast shadows on his face, making his expression hard to read, but I could see the defiance in his eyes, the same defiance that had driven him to demand ownership of our family home. "You think you can just take it from me?" I challenged, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. I clenched my fists at my sides, feeling the textured fabric of my dress under my fingers, a reminder of how much I had sacrificed for this family. Memories of laughter and warmth flooded my mind, a stark contrast to the coldness of the present moment. I remembered Ethan as a child, his laughter echoing through these very walls, but that boy was gone, replaced by a man driven by greed. Ethan's jaw tightened, his breath coming in quick bursts as he shot back. "It's not just a house, Mom, it's my future. You never really cared about what I wanted." His words cut deep, igniting a fire within me. I felt my heart race, the unfairness of his accusation fueling my determination. I had nurtured him, supported him, and yet here we were, on opposite sides of a chasm he had created. "You're wrong. I have always been here for you, but you only see what you want to see," I retorted, my emotions spilling over like a dam breaking under pressure. The rawness of my voice surprised even me, but I refused to back down. I needed him to hear me, to understand that love sometimes meant standing firm, even when it hurt. The shadows danced around us, a reflection of the turmoil we were both experiencing, and for a fleeting moment I wondered if we could find common ground amidst the chaos. He stepped forward, his anger palpable, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "You think signing that paper will solve everything? You're just giving up on us." I could see the pain behind his rage, the vulnerability he was masking with bravado. It mirrored my own feelings of helplessness, and for an instant I hesitated, my heart aching for the son I had loved fiercely. "Ethan, listen to me. This isn't just about the house, it's about respect and honesty. I won't let you bulldoze me anymore," I said, my voice rising, each word laced with the weight of my conviction. He looked taken aback, and I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Perhaps he wasn't entirely blind to the way his actions had hurt our family. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with the echoes of our past, moments of laughter, shared dreams, and the love that once bound us. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the uncertainty of what lay ahead mingling with hope. Perhaps this confrontation was not the end, but rather a painful step towards healing. Just as I thought we might break through, he shook his head defiantly, the moment shattering like glass. "You're still wrong, Mom. You've always been wrong. I won't let you take my future away." His voice was firm, but I could sense the tremor beneath it, a crack in his armor. "Then let's fight for it together, Ethan, but not like this," I implored, reaching out, hoping to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. It was an invitation, a plea for him to see that this battle was not just about possessions, but about our relationship, a chance to reclaim what we had lost. But the moment was fleeting, and as his eyes hardened, I knew. The walls he had built around himself were impenetrable for now. The realization of our broken connection hit me like a wave, leaving me gasping for air. I had come here seeking closure, but instead, I was left with the overwhelming weight of unresolved conflict. As I turned away, my heart felt heavy with the finality of our exchange. The living room, once filled with warmth, now felt cold and empty, much like the space that had grown between us. I stepped outside into the fading light, the cool evening air a stark contrast to the heat of our argument. My breath came out in shaky puffs, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. This was not how I had envisioned this moment, but perhaps it was a necessary step on the path to healing. We were both wounded, and while the road ahead was uncertain, I had a flicker of hope that one day, we could find our way back to each other. The aftermath of my confrontation with Emily was a heavy silence, lingering in the air like a thick fog obscuring the light. I sat at the dining table, the familiar scent of the homemade lasagna wafting through the room, but it felt foreign now. The table was set for dinner, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos we had just endured. Each plate, each fork laid out perfectly, felt like a facade, hiding the tumult beneath. I could hear the distant laughter of the guests filtering through the walls, a reminder of the joy that seemed so far removed from our reality. My heart raced as I fidgeted with the edges of the napkin, the rough fabric grounding me amidst the uncertainty. Emily entered the room, her expression a mixture of confusion and anger, her cheeks still flushed from our earlier confrontation. She avoided my gaze as she took her seat, the tension palpable between us. I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air, pressing down on both of us. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm that had opened during the toast, yet I felt paralyzed by the fear of further alienating her. I cleared my throat, the sound echoing in the otherwise still room, my voice trembling slightly as I prepared to speak. "Emily, I know I've hurt you, and I didn't mean to make this day about me," I started, my voice steadier than I felt. I paused, searching her expression for any sign of understanding, but found only a cool mask of indifference. "I just want you to know that your happiness is all I've ever wanted. I've felt invisible for so long, and it pains me to think you see me that way." A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but it was quickly replaced by defiance. "You don't get it, do you? You've always been about yourself." she shot back, her voice rising, and I felt the sting of her words cut through the air. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of the love that had once bound us. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm here now, willing to listen, I replied, leaning forward, yearning for connection. Can we not try to find a way to move forward? I want to understand your feelings, truly. As I watched her contemplate my words, I sensed the walls beginning to crack. I just don't want to feel like I have to choose between you and my life with Mark, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The vulnerability in her tone struck a chord in me, and I immediately reached out, placing my hand on the table, a silent offer of peace. You don't have to choose, sweetheart. I want to be part of your life, not a shadow lurking in the background. We can figure this out together. In that moment, I felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to rebuild what had been broken. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of possibility. The scars left by betrayal would not vanish overnight, but I was ready to heal, ready to embrace the love that still existed beneath the surface. We both needed this moment, a step toward reconciling the past and forging a new path forward together. As I stood in the quiet of my home, the fading light of the day cast long shadows across the living room. The walls, once filled with laughter and memories, now echoed the weight of recent events. I took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar sense of home, the faint aroma of lavender from the candles flickering softly on the mantel and the lingering warmth of the evening sun. I could feel the fabric of the couch beneath my fingers, its texture a comforting reminder of the countless moments I had shared with my family here. Yet there was an undeniable shift in the air, a new understanding that had blossomed amidst the chaos. Reflecting on the tumultuous journey I had endured, I felt a mix of relief and lingering sorrow. The confrontation with Emily had been a turning point, a moment where I finally reclaimed my voice. The path ahead was uncertain, but the glimmer of hope I felt was undeniable. I recalled the warmth in her eyes as we began to bridge the chasm that had formed between us, a flicker of connection that I had longed for. I had shared my truths, revealing the depths of my pain and vulnerability, and it felt as though the chains binding us were starting to loosen. As I looked around the room, I envisioned a future where laughter would once again fill these walls. Perhaps we could learn to navigate our relationship anew, forging a bond stronger than before. The thought of rebuilding our connection filled me with a renewed sense of purpose. I was determined to take the lessons I had learned and apply them, to not only be a better mother but a more authentic version of myself. In this moment of reflection,